Hey, good morning. How are you today? How is your Monday going? Hopefully, it is off to a great start. Listen, I'm curious. Tell me where you're tuning in from today. Drop it in the chat. Go ahead and let me know where you're tuning in from. Would love to hear it. You know, there is a lot happening in real estate right now, and I have some exciting data to share with you. Zoodealio embarked upon its first survey, and so we have surveyed Americans throughout the U.S., and we have some interesting results, and we're calling this the Zoodealio Real Estate Sentiment Survey. We're going to be doing this every quarter, and I'm really excited to kind of share with you some of those early results and findings. And where are you tuning in from? Would love to know. Let's see, we've got Blanca from Phoenix. How are you, Blanca? Hope all is well. Glad to have you on here today and joining us. Yeah, you know, it's just such an interesting time in real estate. And I feel like we have been saying that month over month, year over year for several years now. If you've been selling since pre-pandemic and through the pandemic and after the pandemic, what you know is that the only constant, it seems, in this real estate market is change. And it's just really interesting where we're at right now in today's time and space. Hi, Kathy. Welcome from Boston. How are you today? Glad to have you. Yeah, things are getting so interesting. So I'm going to share my screen now and go over some of the data that I just mentioned. So we've got, let's see, your son lectures you about tabs. You know, I like them all open. It does kind of compress the bandwidth of the computer. So here and again, I do a mass close. And I did figure out how many of you are iPhone users. iPhone users, your Safari tab, there is a limit to that. I hit that limit. It's embarrassing to say how many tabs you can have open in Safari before it tells you you have to close them down. So I hit that, and if you know, and it's a ton. So anyway, I like to have it all up and at my fingertips. That just works best for me. That's just what I do. So the top 10 cash offer markets, I like to keep showing these. We're reporting these in conjunction with Broke Agent Media, BAM. And so if you listen and tune into BAM's daily live cast, maybe you've already seen these, but this is fresh, hot off the press. Denver, Colorado came in at number 1 last week. Las Vegas was 2, Fayetteville, North Carolina. What is happening in North Carolina? Because look, Fayetteville, North Carolina is number 3, 4 was Phoenix, and then look, 5 Raleigh, and then we've got Charleston, South Carolina. San Diego came in at 7, Henderson, Nevada at 8, Atlanta, Georgia 9, and another North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina, number 10. If you are tuning in from North Carolina, are you seeing a lot of activity? Because we are getting pummeled with cash offer requests from North Carolina. So pretty interesting. You know, we track these. And it can just be a really, you know, maybe some active users in that market that are out prospecting for cash offers in a certain market. So maybe skews the numbers a little bit. It's really cool to keep track of the sentiment to see how it shifts. What we have seen consistently since the beginning of the year is that Nevada is top for cash offers. Las Vegas seems to be at the top of the list almost every week. And so really interesting to keep seeing that playing out over and over again. So that is what we're looking at. And then I also wanted to just share some other news that I've kind of assembled that I found to be interesting. So Zillow has turned housing market bear. They have been very bullish on the housing market, quarter over quarter, year over year. But in just recently, they came out, April 17th was the release of this, and they came out and said that they anticipate home prices on a national level are going to decrease by 1.7% in the next year. Not all markets are created equal. I get it. All real estate is hyper local. I know, but the sentiment has changed. It's shifted. And now Zillow is saying that we could be looking at some downward pricing pressure. So are we in a price discovery phase? I believe we are. We're working in so many markets across the US that we're seeing some strain on market conditions that I think that this probably is pretty indicative of what's to come. Not a huge decrease, 1.7%. Of course, that's nationalized. So some markets may even appreciate, some may depreciate more than that 1.7, and that just kind of all equals out. We do know that March existing home sales slipped, and we are now at a seasonally adjusted rate of 4.05 million home sales, which is tracking about last year. And if we remember what last year looked like, home sales were low. And in fact, you had to go back to 1995 to have another year with that similar low level of home sales. The biggest differentiator between 1995 and today is population growth. And so when we look at the people that are selling, I truly believe that it is the 5Ds. It's those divorce, diapers, debt, downsizers, you know, all of those driving life forces that cause people to move. And that is truly what we're probably seeing by and large, because it is just a tough market. I also found that it was interesting that we're up ever so slightly in inventory, a 4-month inventory in the Phoenix market. If you're tuning in from the Phoenix market, so Blanca, what we have here is 51% more inventory than we did last year. Is it terrible? Is it huge? No, but the reality is this is typically a really hot season, and so to have more inventory and less coming off the market is speaking to maybe some lower home sales. Perhaps we could see some midsummer, shift and boom, but what we're tracking now is lower than typical. And so just a really interesting time in the real estate market. And of course, we know that a lot of that is driven by what's happening economically, what's happening macroeconomically as well. So we would love to see interest rates come down a little bit. I know you probably would. I think that buyers would, absolutely. And the Fed does meet beginning of May 6th and 7th. So we may see some relief come from those interest rates. Too soon to tell, but I am hopeful and optimistic that we're going to see something, and anything would be welcome right now. Any positive news, I think, would spur some action in the real estate market. This was some Redfin data, and I found this to be really interesting as well. This was about concessions. So sellers, by and large, 2 out of 5 sellers gave concessions to buyers. So it's at a really high rate. 44% of sellers are giving concessions to buyers. We know that rate buy downs are so impactful right now to get that buyer into the home. And so it's, not surprising that sellers are anteing up and they're helping that buyer make it into the home. This kind of also speaks to me about what we may see, and what we may see is less cash transactions, more finance transactions, because it does seem that, if you're paying cash, a concession probably wouldn't be as beneficial. So what I'm also kind of anticipating is that we could see cash sales kind of trending downward somewhat, because if more sellers are giving concessions, that kind of speaks to maybe more finance buyers getting into homes right now. Here is the early results of our Zoodealio real estate sentiment survey. As I mentioned earlier, we embarked upon our first survey, so you are the first ones to get some of these early results. And I don't necessarily love what we're seeing, but it is what the data is showing, and home buying sentiment is pretty darn bleak. If you look at the answer to this question, what best reflects your feelings about the current real estate market, 51% of those surveyed said that prices are too high. 18%, this is a pretty good chunk, 18% said that they don't trust the market and they're waiting for some sort of crash. I always find this one to be so interesting, that people think that it is going to be a repeat of 2008 times. And the reality is it is not. I mean, 2008, the home prices were built upon very, very low lending standards, which caused, of course, the foreclosure tsunami. And we don't have those conditions today. So why do people think that we're going to see some sort of crazy crash? I don't know, but 18% are still thinking, they're holding out for something to change, some sort of crash to happen. 13% said mortgage rates are too high. 12% said, I'm unaffected. This doesn't really bother me. So good for you. Glad it's not affecting you. And only 6% feel confident about buying and selling in today's real estate market. Tariffs are on the consumer radar in a big way. And, if you listen to the news, you're going to hear all about the tariffs. So it's not surprising that they are. The reality is, though, when asked how concerned are you about tariffs or trade policies and will they make housing more expensive, 44% said that they were very concerned and 34% said they were somewhat concerned. So there is a level of concern amongst Americans over tariffs and what that is going to do to the housing market. What is that going to do to potentially construction prices, even like renovation, things for their home, appliances, all of that? People do think that it is going to get a little bit more expensive. Staying put is the overwhelming plan for most people in today's real estate market. When asked what best describes your real estate plans for the next 12 months, 46% said, I plan to stay put. That's nearly half. Nearly half of folks just intend to stay where they're at. 18% said that they plan to buy a home. 17% said they plan to rent. 12% weren't sure, and 7% are looking to sell their home. So overwhelmingly, we know that when things are really uncertain, that tends to kind of get people to just stay put, and they just kind of shut down and wait it out. We're going to take the wait and see approach, and that is playing out in these survey results. So not super surprising, but it is what it is. 44% of Americans are delaying buying or selling. So this is that we're going to wait and see and take action later. Have recent inflation and rising costs impacted your housing decisions? And 34% said, yes, I've delayed buying. 10% said, yes, I've delayed selling. There was a swath of people that said, no, my plans are unchanged, 28%. didn't affect them at all. And 28% said that they weren't planning on moving anyway. All right, so here was another one that I thought was really interesting. A lot of folks changed their real estate plans due to economic conditions. So 64% of Americans changed their real estate plans due to the economic conditions. 3% sold earlier than they had intended. 4% purchased a smaller or a cheaper home. 12% of folks moved in with family or friends. So we are seeing still more households combine. 22% decided to rent instead of buy, and 23% put off home renovations. Interesting. And then there was a group of people that made no changes in their plans. So 36% of people had no change to their plans. But if we really look at what's happening, and you're feeling it, you're having the conversations, those intimate conversations with buyers and sellers and people, and you're hearing this kind of play out. And my next coaching call, I'm going to go through some of the open-ended survey results that we received, because we asked a few open-ended questions and got back some really interesting stuff. I mean, people sharing with us like, I can't even afford to rent right now, let alone buy, or people concerned that we're headed for another crash, or people sharing a story about how they foreclosed back in 2008 and they never want to go through that again. And so we're kind of hearing that this real estate market, it is just so interesting. And what we're feeling is that people hate it, but they hate it. They also think simultaneously, overwhelmingly, 64% of Americans think that home prices are going to go up in the future. And so it is such a unique moment in time for us to be the true professionals and advisors and to really share the information that matters most. If you've got folks that are considering making a move right now, if you've got buyers that potentially can buy right now, what a great time for us to share with them a way to do so, the path to do so, perhaps through that rate buy down, perhaps through getting seller concessions. I look at our cash buyer program, and that is the program that turns buyers into cash buyers. And I look at that program, and it is such a beautiful program, especially for today's market. Everyone loved it when the market was really competitive, because it's just a no-brainer to be a cash buyer when there's 5 offers on one property. But I think that we all kind of forgot about it and maybe got a little lackadaisical on our offerings, because it is a really cool offering, and you can truly put a buyer in a power position by turning them into a cash buyer, getting them into the home, not only getting them into the home, but getting them in at a lower basis, and then using that differential to do really cool things like buy down their rate, maybe make renovations to the home. I think it was back in early December, I had Brian Rogerson on. He's the CEO of the Cash to Win program. And I had him on, and we went in depth into how this program works and why it is such a no-brainer for your buyers. And I think that it is time that we start using these programs to reinvigorate people and show them that there is actually beauty in these times. Because what is going to happen when rates do come down? What is going to happen maybe when we see affordability ease a little because those rates come down? What's going to happen is everyone is going to flood into the market. And so then buyers are going to be competing again, and then they're just going to be back how they were having to overbid and waive inspections, waive contingencies back in 2021. And so if you want to get ahead of that and you want to put yourself in a really powerful position, because what we know is that homeowners are 47 times more wealthy than renters, the best thing to do is to do it now when there's less competition, when everybody's nervous and everybody's scared. The reality is our population is growing. People need a place to live. And yeah, while stocks and crypto and all of these great other assets are wonderful, you can't live in a stock certificate. You can live in a home. And so I think it is truly our time to inspire real estate conversations. That's just on the buy side. But let's think about what happens when we can truly bring compelling cash offers to sellers and show them a path where perhaps they can take advantage of some of these other factors in the market. Perhaps if they're looking to buy and sell, they can use one of the cash offers to have that certainty, have that convenience, and then they can look at that cash buyer program to really go out there and compete with the power of cash. And so I want to do a couple things today. I want to take us through the entire process of a cash plus closing. And for today's purposes, I'm doing the cash plus with repairs, so you can see what that repair element looks like thrown into the mix. I'm going to go do a breakdown. I'm going to show you exactly how the numbers work so that we're all super confident and we can bring these offerings to our clients and talk with them in a really, just professional, intelligent manner, present the option, and then let them decide if that option works best for them. So before I dive into that, I want to show you one other thing, and in fact, let me speak to a moment about this because it's powerful. Did any of you all notice last week how Opendoor stock just tanked? It went down to like in the 70s. I mean, it just tanked last week. And I'm talking like 70 cents. So it's like a penny stock now. Like Opendoor stock just went phew. And it was really, really odd because there was nothing in the news that we could look at and super point to. They did settle with investors. There was a settlement. So if you are an Opendoor stockholder, if you had purchased Opendoor stock through a period of time, they did a settlement with their investors because they misrepresented their pricing algorithm. So they kind of made their investors think that this pricing supercomputer that they created was more intelligent than it actually was. And the reality is there were still a lot of humans doing the pricing of these properties. And because of that, it was wrong. They lied. And so Opendoor is being held accountable and they're settling with investors on that. But other than that, no real massive news broke about Opendoor. They're still acquiring like 15,000 homes every year. And, it's not like earth shattering a ton of homes, but it can be pretty sizable depending on the market. So I'm going to pull up some data on Opendoor right now. We're going to head over to DataDoor, and they compile data on Opendoor, and this is a great source for myself, and I use it to track even their margin. So we look at, how do they buy? Do they buy at a 10% margin, at a 12% margin, all of that. So that's one of the things I look at because, of course, what I love to do is I love to compare the Opendoor cash offers to the Cash Plus. And what we know is that over time, historically, the Cash Plus is likely a better option because it's not a margin offer. It is a fee-based iBuyer offer, and it's just a different structure. And as we go through today, I want to share with you kind of like the good, the bad, and the ugly of this structure so that when you're out there and you're empowered and you're sharing this, we can just represent what it is and then let the seller decide if that works for them or not. Okay, so I am going to share my screen again, and we're headed into DataDoor. It took me just a sec to pull that up. So this is data again on Opendoor, just Opendoor. This does not include OfferPad. One of the things I look at is, currently they got about 4,900 homes on the market across all of their markets. You can see kind of the asset size that they have out there, $1.87 billion in real estate out there. We can also kind of see the hot spots of where their listings are geographically. But one of the things I look at is this embedded margin. And I'm trying to zoom in here a little bit. And this is basically their embedded margin is they buy at one price, they sell at a higher price, and that is the difference, that margin between buy and sell. And then I also love to just point out that we know Opendoor takes a service fee, and typically that is 5%. And so if they're buying, at X price and reselling at Y, and that happens to be for March, a 15% embedded margin, we know we can add their service fee onto that. So it's 20%. And then what we also know about Opendoor is that typically during the inspection period, they're going to come after the seller for something. And I can typically say with confidence, it's going to be maybe roughly 1% of the purchase price that they're going to come at the seller for as a credit in lieu of repairs. And so you can right off the bat look at in March when Opendoor is purchasing, their embedded margin is about 21%. So that seller is giving up about 21% of their equity for this certain and for this convenient home sale. That is quite a chunk of change if you ask me. And I love to look at this and know this so that when I'm having conversations, I can speak intelligently about the different offer types and what that would look like if the seller were to accept it. I think that is likely why the Cash Plus offer structure is so popular. It is our most popular offer structure. Not only that, but since we've been doing the Cash Plus, there have been so many other copycats that have come into the market. And at first it's a little disheartening. You're like, oh, they copied. But then you get excited because what you realize is that it is becoming mainstream. And you realize that this offer structure truly works for folks. And so it gets super exciting. Not when they just like straight up copy the name of your offer. That's frustrating. But it does get super exciting to see others adopting and implementing similar offer structures. Now, there are some different, secret sauce, if you will, of the offer structure that we have here as part of the Zoodealio platform. And I'm going to go through that and show you that in just a moment. I also want to hop into my Zoodealio account quickly and just remind you of the couple ways that you can get cash offers for your clients. Because see, you're all probably not working Zoodealio the same way. Some of you may be prospecting with Zoodealio. Maybe you're reaching out to an expired listing and you're calling them, and instead of saying like, hey, why do you think your house didn't sell? Maybe instead you're saying, hey, I see your house didn't sell and I have a cash buyer and some offers for you. If I could stop by tomorrow at 2 p.m. and take some updated photos, perhaps I could get these offers increased. Would 3 p.m. work for you? I mean, you could be taking a different angle in prospecting with Zoodealio. Or, maybe you're using Zoodealio just to take those cash offers to your listing appointment and you want to generate them on the fly. And so I just want to make sure that you know how to get those cash offers quickly. We have made a couple changes too, so I just want to make sure that everyone is on the same page. We're hoping that the changes that are being made are really intuitive, and that you can just kind of figure it all out. But a couple things I want to show you real quick. So we're going to log in there first. Okay, as I mentioned, perhaps you're prospecting with Zoodealio and you want to spin up those cash offers on the fly. And so I just want to remind everyone of how you can do that. So a couple ways. You could be in your client list and maybe you're looking at your other clients that are in Zoodealio. Perhaps you have the home report running and so you see the stats up here on the top like I have displayed. So there's a button here that says submit a property. You can click that button, and when you click that button, you can enter your address here and you can get the cash offers spun up right here through doing that. Also, when you first log into your Zoodealio account, you can always just click this get cash offers button, and that's going to take you to the same place. So you can put that client in and get those cash offers generated like that. A couple other things I like to point out is that first landing page that I was just on that I logged into to get to my agent dashboard. If you're ever wondering like, how do I get to my landing page? We've brought them front and center for you along the left-hand tab. If you click the landing pages, you're going to be able to see your offers landing page. You can come over here, you can copy the link, and as soon as you've copied the link, it's in your clipboard. You can go paste it wherever you want. And we also have the home report landing page. So if you have the home report on your account, you have another landing page for the home report opt-in, which is a little bit of a lower barrier of entry. So if you're lead generating, it can be a different, it's more like a home valuation type lead versus a cash offer lead, but depending on your needs, could be really cool. Could be fun to throw this into Facebook groups and just like let people know that, hey, here's a way for them to, get that data on their home. I truly believe that as consumers, we want to know where we stand in just about all things, and we want to know where we stand at our fingertips. And so the more information that we can provide people to help them kind of understand where they're at in the market, I think the better. And the beauty about the home report is it does just that. I know I'm kind of like going off on the home report now, but I get so excited about it because it gives consumers that at a glance. It's that nerd wallet, if you will, of their home, of their equity, of their rental position, and gives them all of that great data in one place so that they truly can track over time where they stand in the market. So just wanted to point out where those are for you, and a couple things that I want to show on the offers. So when you get the offers back, the first thing I want you to realize is that first instant number is a preliminary offer. And what does that mean? Well, that means it's the system's algorithm generated offer of what that home is worth and what the buyer is willing to make on that. Now, what do we know about automated valuation models? Well, I can tell you that Zillow recently gave up $1 million for data scientists to take part in a bounty to improve their Zestimate. And so what we know is that the Zestimate's not always right. And if it was, we might be out of a job, right? And so I think that when we rely on the algorithm exclusively, it can be problematic because algorithms don't take into account everything that the humans do, which is why probably Opendoor got in trouble. So because of that, the number that's displayed instantly is going to be that preliminary offer. Now, if you see these numbers return and you immediately know that that feels off for that property, there is a way for you to instantly request a manual review. So I want to show you where you can do that. So let's say you get those cash offers and you know that the house is, let's say in this circumstance, the house is going to be worth, let's say this one I just pulled up is a house in Monday, Texas, and the value range is between 117 and 123. But let's just say you instantly look at this and you go, no, that house is worth 175, and you just know instantly something is off. Well, the beauty is you can request that manual review immediately by coming down. You're going to see I'm in my offers tab, and over here to the right, you're going to see manual review, and you just click that. And you can put in here what you believe the value of that property actually is. You can leave some notes and then you just hit submit, and that is going to trigger a manual review of that offer. Now, a couple things. If you were on my call a few weeks ago, you'll remember that I had displayed some different offer configurations, and I was asking for feedback on what made most sense to you. I was so thankful for all of your feedback, and based on your feedback, we did request some changes to be made to the display of the offers. So within about 2 weeks, you're going to see this change slightly, not a whole lot, but ever so slightly. And what we believe is that the enhancements we're making will be more clear on exactly how that offer works and exactly what those fees are. All right, so just wanted to show everyone how they can quickly and easily get these cash offers. I wanted to show you the mechanism for requesting that manual review. Now, let's say that these numbers, they're in the range and you're going, okay. Now, keep in mind that any of the structured sale offers, so the cash plus offer, the cash plus with repairs, the sell now, move later, all of those offers are designed to be a fair market value offer. So this offer, it's not going to hit pie in the sky pricing for sellers that think that their house is worth way more than it is. But what it is intended to do is be a true fair market value cash offer. So what a buyer is willing to pay is what that offer should come in at. So if you look at this and you're going, all right, things look to be kind of in line, we want to get the final number. The final number does depend on the condition of the property. Not all homes are created equal. Oh boy, do we know that. Because of it, we ask that you get photos, you upload photos so that the underwriters can take a look at the property, take into consideration the condition that they can see. And oh, by the way, it's not going to do you or the seller any favors to take the photos in a way that doesn't show the whole picture. For instance, if there's a big hole in the wall and you take the photo so that it doesn't show the big hole in the wall, not going to do you any favors, because if the offer gets accepted, the buyer is going to go in and do an inspection and they're going to see that anyway. So we always say, show the good, the bad, and the ugly. This is designed to be a fair market value cash offer. And the more accurate we can get that pricing, the better it's going to be for everybody involved. I'll explain why in a moment. But in order to get the final number, you could come in here and you could click get final number. It's going to ask you to confirm a few details. And then what it will do is it will send that request to our underwriters. Typically, it takes 1 to 3 business days for that final offer number to be returned to you. If you've requested finalization on any offer and you have not yet received that final offer back, and if it's been, over a business day, let's say you're on business day number 2, there is no harm in you following up with our team on that. Sometimes things happen. Sometimes, emails go into spam boxes. Sometimes due to overwhelming demand, maybe it gets, deprioritized in the list. All sorts of things can happen. And so it is absolutely okay for you to follow up with us on that. There are a couple ways you can do that. One of the easiest ways is just to click this little chat button here down in the bottom, and then you can choose your department. You can choose offers, for instance, if you're following up with an offer, and then you could just type in, hey, I requested the final number on 123 East Main Street. I don't have it yet. Do you need anything from me? Often the underwriters may, come back to the agent and ask for all sorts of different things, that maybe there's a discrepancy on square footage, or maybe they're having a difficult time finding comps, or this, that, and the other. Basically, we want to work with you to get that offer returned as quickly as possible and for it to be as accurate as possible. And so because of that, we welcome follow-up. Another thing too is when the final number comes back to you, they will return the underwriter's analysis showing that the comps that were used, maybe the different deviations that were made on that. And I think that is a really helpful tool. It almost kind of looks like a mini appraisal. It gives you some insight into what they're seeing. And then it also gives you the opportunity to challenge anything that you disagree with. So just wanted to let everyone know that and put that on your radar as well. So let's skin out the cash plus with repairs, and let's do the timeline of the events leading up to the first closing, and then we'll go through the timeline of events leading up to the second closing. I think that this is important because what we've learned is that, everyone's pretty super clear on that first closing, but it's that second closing that often there are question marks on. And what I really strive to promote is a lot of transparency. I want everyone to be aware. I want the seller to know how this works. Of course, we want you to know how this works, because the last thing that we want is for there to be an expectation that wasn't clear, or maybe someone didn't understand. And what we know is oftentimes those are what creates a lot of stress and negativity in transactions is when there's not really good expectations. So I thought today would be a good time for us just to go through the timeline of events, for me to share what that looks like on a step-by-step basis. And then also we'll go through the timeline of events on that second closing as well. So on the first closing, very simple. So the offer is returned. As I just shared with you, you can do that through the Get Cash Offers button. They can get that offer through your home report. They can get that offer from your cash offer landing page. Perhaps you're working with a CRM and you're using Zapier to give offers to all of your sellers. So maybe they got the offer through a Zapier integration. No matter what, no matter how that offer was returned, it was returned. So that's step number one. And then after that offer was returned, either you or the seller clicked the Get Final Number button and you finalized the offer. And then that final offer was returned to you. So that would be step number two. So step number three would be that offer is accepted. And so when that number comes back, if that final number is still agreeable to the seller and that's accepted, that would be step number three. Now, during that offer acceptance period, a few things are going to happen. So the first thing that will happen is the buyer will generate their sales addendum, which outlines how the program works, and they will send that to you, and you'll have the seller review, and you'll have the seller sign, and you'll also attach your state contract to that as well, right? And based on that sales addendum and your state contract, escrow will be opened then by the buyer. Okay, so it's a pretty similar process to a typical escrow. The only difference is that you prepare the state contract and the buyer prepares their sales addendum. All right, so after escrow is opened, then the buyer will go in and they'll do a home inspection. And typically they do a home inspection, and then if needed, they may do other different inspections, such as let's say a sewer scope if the property is older than 1980. Let's say that there's a septic or a well, or if there needs to be a radon inspection. So depending on the market, there could be some other inspections that are done along with that home inspection. But typically the home inspection is, like the biggest one, takes the most time, all of that. So the buyer will go in and they'll do their home inspection. Now, keep in mind, this is on the Cash Plus with repairs. So I wanted to just make that caveat because this is where it's a cool opportunity to really enhance the resale value of that home. Or for instance, I was talking with an agent last week, and she's had a listing that's been on the market since September. She's not getting any action. The home is in disrepair. The seller is at a loss. She's feeling like she's going to lose the listing. And because of that, she's going, I need a new strategy. And because that home needs work, well, now she was able to take the Cash Plus offer with repairs to the seller and propose a different strategy. Hey, what about pulling the home off the market for a few weeks, making these repairs and putting it back on the market when it's enhanced? And oh, by the way, because it's a cash offer, you get your first payout. Then you no longer have to carry the utilities, the property taxes, the insurance, all of that. So anyway, this can be a great strategy even for on-market properties that need work. So if you've got a listing that's just stagnant or sitting, or maybe the seller is going like, what else you got for me, agent? Well, you do have offers, and you can use the Zoodealio cash offers for on-market properties as well. All right, so once the home inspection is done, what the buyer will do is the buyer will propose a repair strategy. So they'll go through the findings of the home inspection, they'll look at the market comparables, and they will propose sometimes a couple options. Maybe there's an option for just more of a lipstick, if you will, refresh of the property. So maybe they're just gonna propose like carpet and paint and just some minor repair. On the other hand, maybe this house could benefit from a full remodel, and maybe the market would support a full remodel. And not only that, but allow the seller to potentially capture some great upside. In those scenarios, you could have more of a scope of work. But in any event, those will be proposed to the seller and to you after the buyer has completed their inspection. Now, sometimes there'll be like a preliminary along with that Cash Plus with repairs offer, but you gotta remember that until the home inspection is complete, they don't really know what they're working with entirely. And so that full scope is proposed after the home inspection is complete. Now, once the seller now sees the home inspection, they see the different repair strategies, and they have a conversation with you. At that point, they can really look at all of their options and decide what strategy makes sense. Maybe a repair strategy doesn't make sense, and maybe they just go as is, or maybe just the refresh makes sense, and so they pick one of the lighter options. Whatever that might be, the seller is in full control of that experience. So they get to agree to what they want to agree to, and they get to pick what strategy works best for them. Because keep in mind, and as you'll see when we scan out the numbers, the seller does pay for the repairs. I mean, the buyer only makes a program fee on this cash offer. So there's no margin made by the buyer. So the repairs are an expense to the seller. So obviously they get to be in charge of what that ends up being. So seller picks a strategy that works for them, and then we proceed to closing. And I like to call this the first closing because they're going to get their first payout. They're going to be able to move out of the home. They're going to be able to turn those utilities off. They're not going to have to worry about the HOA anymore. They're not going to have to worry about the taxes anymore. They're not going to have to worry about the interim property maintenance anymore. The buyer will come in and take care of all of that. Also, this is when you get your first paycheck. So with the Cash Plus offer, you are paid on the first sale. You're paid 2%, and you're paid 2% on the second sale as well. So you'll get your first payout as well on your compensation. And it looks like I got a couple questions. Oh, Blanca, absolutely. Absolutely. I can give you copies of these slides. If you would love a copy of this slide, you can just email me. My first name, Kayla, Kala at Zoodealio.com, and I'm happy to send them to you. If you're watching this on the replay, or if you got this recording and you got it on an email, just reply to the email and we're happy to give you copies of the slides. Deborah has a great question. I work for a new home builder. How can we leverage Zoodealio to help sell our homes? Oh my goodness, I love it. Well, a couple ways, Deborah. If the builder is open to a true structure payout and they need to move some inventory, and sometimes we've had this happen, especially towards the end of the fiscal year for the builder, we can do the Cash Plus on new builds. You can also use this product for, let's say you have buyers coming in and they want to buy the new build, but they need to sell their home. So this could be a cool product for them to use when they sell their home to get them into your new build sooner. So lots of different ways that you could make that happen. Even the cash buyer program, if you have buyers walking into your new build, and maybe if you don't already have an established relationship or you're looking for a different option for them, the cash buyer program is really cool for that too. Okay, so we are at our first closing. Seller has moved out of the house. A couple things. When the seller moves out, they do need to leave it in broom swept condition. They do need to make sure that they've removed all of their personal belongings, all of the trash, etc. Because this is a partnership with the buyer. And because of that, like if they just leave it dirty and with stuff in it, that actually hurts them, because your job now is to resell this home on the open market. And then the buyer's gonna have to go in there and they're gonna have to take care of the things that the seller didn't. And so that would come out of their reserve. So I just like to kind of hit on that. It's truly a partnership. And I think that going into that, the more that we're all on that same mindset, the better it is, because of the fee structure of the Cash Plus offer, where the buyer is not making any margin, right? Like I just showed you Data Door. I just showed you what Open Door is making. Open Door is making margin and their fee, right? So they're making a huge chunk of that equity. Well, in the Cash Plus offers, in any of the structured sale offers, again, Cash Plus with repairs, sell now, move later, any of those structured sale offers, the buyer does not make margin. They're only making a program fee. So we got to be sure that we keep it, more of that partnership mindset, because ultimately when we're working together, we can get the most back for that seller. So they leave the home in broom swept condition. They move out. They got their first, they got their first paycheck, and now you relist the home on the open market. So what does that look like? Here are the timeline of events leading up to the second closing. And again, this is for the Cash Plus with repairs. So this is repairs are going to happen. As soon as the seller moves out, the buyer is going to go in and they're going to make the agreed upon repairs. And that will happen immediately. So seller moves out, buyer goes in, they make those repairs that were agreed upon. And then after the repairs are complete, you will be noticed that repairs are complete. You are the eyes and ears on the ground. And so the buyer is going to ask you to go in and just verify that all of that scope of work was complete and that it's satisfactory. Once that is done, and once everybody has agreed upon that the repairs are done, everything looks good, it's ready to go, you will then have a meeting with the buyer, and they call that the resale meeting. So they're going to go through what that resale of the listing will look like. They'll kind of go through the resale marketing plan, which I showed last week on my call as well. It's a really cool plan. I love that there's an agent in Florida that has implemented this as part of their listing agreement, because it does have some language in there that sets forth a price reduction schedule based on showings, based on feedback. So it's a pretty cool document, but they'll go through all of that and just work with you to make sure everyone is clear on those expectations. One of the things that they do expect is for you to go to the property every 2 weeks and check the home, check various things in the home. They do also request that you give them, feedback, showing data, any data that you have on maybe marketing efforts that you've done and what that looked like. So during the resale meeting, they'll go through all of that with you and just make sure everybody is on the same page as to what that remarketing of the home looks like. And then of course, you are listing the home. You're going to get that home on the market. You're going to get your photos done. You're going to make it look great. You're also, we really highly recommend that you do virtual staging of the home. One of the things I've been playing around with, guys, is ChatGPT staging homes, and it is getting good. It's not 100% there yet, but it is getting really good. So I feel like in the very near future, we won't even need to subscribe to any secondary virtual staging service. I think that Chat is going to get so great that it'll be able to do it for us. It does, like I said, it does a really great job, but it takes liberties in changing things. Like if you upload a photo and there's a door that's open and you ask it to virtually stage this room, I've noticed like one time the door comes back closed. Or I tried it in a kitchen the other day and there was like track lighting in the kitchen, and ChatGPT didn't like that track lighting and it deleted all of it, and it like made me laugh. And then I tried it in a living room, and I asked it to make it like a modern farmhouse type living room, and it actually changed the fireplace to like shiplap. And so it takes liberties right now, in addition to just putting furniture in the room. I'm like, no, just put furniture in this room. So anyway, I do believe though it's going to get better and better and better. So that'll be really fun to keep an eye on and watch. All right, sorry, little segue there. The next thing is property is listed, and you're going to do those property status reports for the buyer on that consistent interval time frame of every 2 weeks, just to keep them in the loop about what you're doing, about what's going on with the property, make sure that everything is looking great. And then you're going to get a contract at some point, right? You're going to get that contract come through, and the buyer will negotiate that contract for the best and most favorable terms so that the seller can get the most amount of their reserve returned to them. And of course, once that contract is accepted, it's going to proceed just like a typical escrow would. It'll go to closing, and then once it closes, then the seller will receive their final disbursement of the reserve. So what does that look like? Let me just skim through all of that really quickly for us. Oh, and Deborah, I was talking about using ChatGPT to virtually stage vacant homes for you. And it's pretty cool. It's totally not quite there yet, but it's pretty fun. And I think that every time I try it, it gets a little bit better and better. All right, so let's skim through this quickly. We talked about the cash plus with repairs. It's intended to be that full market value cash offer. How the buyer does it is they take a reserve, which is a portion of the seller's equity. It is set aside until the home is sold on the open market. All of the fees and the costs are disclosed up front. So the seller is going to know exactly what the program fee is, exactly what the agent compensation and resale closing costs are going to look like. And in this scenario, this is considering repairs, they're going to have an at a glance of those repairs as well. So again, we talked about full market value coming back in the dashboard. You can always request a manual review if you don't feel like that value is fair market value. One of the reasons this is so critical is because let's say that the price is way too high. If the price is way too high, then what's likely going to happen is the seller is going to get more of a first payout and less of a second payout, and they may be disappointed at the end. On the flip side, if the price is too low, the seller is going to get less of a first payout, and it may not be enough for the entire deal to work. And so it truly is best when it is right on the head, when we can nail it, when that offer can come in truly at what that home will resell for. Now, market conditions are different, and so obviously this can't always be accomplished, which is why the reserve is taken to hedge against that market price. So again, the reserve is a portion of the seller's equity. It is set aside until the second closing. In this scenario with repairs, the repair credit is in addition to the reserve. Let me repeat that again because we get asked this a lot. The repair credit is in addition to the reserve. And when I go through the breakdown, you're going to see that as well. The reserve is typically anywhere from 15 to 25%, depending on the property, depending on the price, depending on the risk it presents to the marketplace, all of that great stuff. Program fees. The program fee is typically 6%. It can vary. So if there's more inventory, if the price is lower, if the price is a lot higher, there are some, circumstances that can cause that to go up. The base is 6%. And then the agent compensation and resale closing costs are 5.5%. I want to hit on this for a moment because we talked a little bit about how there are more buyers in the marketplace now offering an offer, and some even call it a cash plus offer, believe it or not, or a cash offer plus I've seen. They're offering this same offer structure, but this is the biggest differentiator. And I think one of the reasons our cash offers that you get through Zoodealio are the best. And the reason why is the program fee is going to include a lot of those interim ownership costs. And if you look at some of these other buyers that are in the marketplace, they do not. So what do I mean by that? So when that 6% program fee is presented to the seller, we also want to let the seller know that, hey, by the way, when the buyer purchases this property, you're no longer going to have your mortgage. So you're going to stop that mortgage. You're also no longer going to be responsible for utilities, taxes, HOA, and interim property maintenance. Those can be substantial, especially in some states. I mean, insurance in and of itself is getting super expensive in many states. So you can see that this program fee, of course, it covers the buyer's cost of capital, but it also covers those interim ownership costs, which can add up, and the seller is no longer going to have to carry. But if you're looking at another offer that has a similar structure to Zoodealio's offers that we source, pay specific attention to this, because what you'll likely see is that the other buyers deduct this out of the reserve of the seller. And so their program ends up being much more expensive because they're not covering these interim home ownership costs. Okay, so the 5.5% agent compensation and resale closing costs, this covers your listing broker commission. So you're 2% on the first sale, 2% on the second sale, and it also covers the closing costs on the final sale. So on that second sale, all right? Again, commission's pretty self-explanatory. I always get asked this too. Can we negotiate more? Can we, give up a little bit less? Absolutely. Absolutely. Commissions are completely negotiable. For your compensation, you are welcome to, charge less, charge more, whatever you want to do, you are free to do. Obviously the seller has to agree to it, right? But you're welcome to do that. All right. The repairs. As I mentioned, during the inspection period, the buyer will propose the repairs that can be made. They're going to do this strategically. They're going to look at that property and what it presents to the marketplace and make that strategic recommendation. They're also going to, use you for guidance. I mean, you're the local expert. And so if there's information or more data that you can, add to the equation to help everyone make a good decision, by all means, it's a partnership. Please bring forth that. There was one recently where the listing agent never told the buyer that the property needed new windows until after all of the renovations were complete. And it was just so unfortunate that that information wasn't surfaced at the get-go, so that, everyone could be working on the same page. So be sure to surface your recommendations, let them know what you think. And again, at the last sentence there, the repair amount is in addition to the reserve. Okay. Just want to make sure we're all super clear on that. When sometimes the buyer will say, well, Kayla said this. And I'm like, wait a second, I didn't say that. So Kayla did not say that the repairs come out of the reserve, because they don't. If repairs are agreed to, it is in addition. We're going to skim through this really quickly so that everyone is aware of what this would look like. All right, so that first payout, let's say the offer comes in at $500,000. There is a 6% program fee. There is 5.5% agent compensation and resale closing costs. There is a 15% reserve in this scenario. And in this scenario, there are $50,000 worth of repairs happening to this property. So that first payout is $317,500. Okay, so you see how the math works on that. One other thing I like to kind of keep in mind is, in this scenario, you've got that $50,000 worth of repairs happening. And what we all know is that if a property is getting $50,000 in repairs, they're actually, that offer amount of 500,000 is in consideration of those repairs being made, right? So I wanted to keep that in mind, that you will see that that sales price is reflective of those repairs being made to the property and what everyone believes that it could sell for based on those repairs being made. So I just like to point that out, because again, in as is scenario, because of how valuable repairs are to buyers right now, that 500,000, if it had 50,000 in repairs, could only go for like 375 if it didn't, right? Like we do see that playing out and happening. Okay, so let's go to second payout, because there's only 3 ways that this can skin out. And so this will go super quick. So the first scenario is the house sells for what the buyer purchased it for. So in this scenario, the house sells for 500,000. Well, in that scenario, all of that reserve, all 75,000, is dispersed back to the seller. Pretty self-explanatory, right? So if the house sells for what the buyer bought it for, all of that reserve is returned. Second scenario is the house sells for less than what the buyer purchased it for. So let's say that everyone was hopeful that it would get 500 on the open market. The repairs were made. It didn't quite hit 500 because, you know, there were 37 listings in the area and tons of competition. And because of that, it still did well, not as well as everyone had hoped. So it hit 490. So in that scenario, if it sells less, then what will happen is that difference between the original offer and the market value offer will be deducted from the reserve, and the remaining portion will be returned to the seller. So in that scenario, there was a $10,000 differential. So the second payout to that seller was $65,000. Third scenario, and this is really the last and final scenario here, is the home sells for more. And this is, of course, the best. We have a really cool story. There's a property in Virginia that one of our buyers just did a cash plus with repairs on and listed the property, and it got multiple offers and sold for, I don't know, I think it was like $40,000 more than list price. So everybody's super happy about that. Love it when this happens. In this market, it's a challenge, right? We know that this is a challenging market, but when this happens, everyone is just elated because the house sells for more. And the cool thing about the program is, again, the buyer only makes a fee. They don't make any margin. And so if the property sells for more on the open market, all of that is returned back to the seller. So in that scenario, the seller gets their reserve of $75,000 plus the upside of the open market. In this case here, it was $10,000. So a total of $85,000 would be returned to the seller. Thanks so much for just being here and going through that skin out with me. I just think it's so important that we know how the program works, that, you know, we're just presenting the information, presenting the details of it, and then allowing the seller to decide what works for them. I've got a couple questions here. Do you work with investors interested in the rent to own strategy? Yes, Deborah, we do work with investors. Right now, Zoodealio is building out, obviously, we already have investors as part of our ecosystem. But what we're building out now is our Zoodealio investor platform. It's called the Zip, and the Zip will allow investors to connect, authenticate themselves digitally through the platform, and then also to set their buy boxes, etc., in the platform. So stay tuned for more on that. We're streamlining that process. At this point, you know, we've really only worked with accredited investors, or investors that are able to, you know, prove that they have large capacity. So we've really not worked with local or smaller investors or fixer flippers, wholesalers. Those types haven't truly been part of that, because one of the things that's really important to us is non-circumvention, and then of course making sure that the buyer will perform on the offers that are made. So a little bit about that for you. All right, everyone. Well, it is no time like the present to get out there and reconnect with everyone, share what you know, invigorate them. If they're looking to buy, maybe there's a great deal out there. If they're looking to sell, they have more options than ever before. And we want to be your source here for those offers and options. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you back in a couple weeks.